Hello everyone, I'm Pali Bhatt, VP of Product and Design at Google Cloud. I'm excited to welcome you all to Build the Future with GKE. You can ask questions anytime by submitting them in the box below the screen, and we'll have a helpful Googler respond to you. Over the course of today's sessions, we'll share how you can leverage Google's leadership in Kubernetes and use GKE, which is the leading managed Kubernetes service, to benefit from the latest innovations in developer productivity, efficiency, and automated operations so you can both accelerate your time to market and lower your costs. A great deal has changed in the container orchestration space since we first created and opened up Kubernetes to the world more than 6 years ago. But before we talk about all of the awesome capabilities of GKE, I thought it would be fun for us to take a trip down the Kubernetes memory lane. It's hard to imagine now, but back when we were first designing Kubernetes at Google, there was no industry standard for the critical process of managing fleets of containerized applications. With many of the technical innovations of containers themselves coming from Google, like Container Optimized OS, it was only natural that Google offers a groundbreaking new approach for managing containers, one that was based on our experience of launching several billion containers every week internally. Since co-founding the CNCF as a vendor-neutral home for the project in 2014, we've seen a diverse community of developers, all of you, contribute and benefit from this project. Just last year alone, developers from over 500 companies contributed to Kubernetes. The industry has also coalesced around this Google-invented technology, and we're delighted to see that all major cloud providers have followed in our footsteps in offering a Kubernetes service. This broad support of Kubernetes delivers on Google's vision of customers having the choice to run their workloads where and when they want and not get stuck on a legacy cloud provider due to proprietary APIs. Our investment in Kubernetes has continued to grow since its inception as an internal project here at Google. We've reaffirmed our commitment to the public project, and since co-founding the CNCF, have made over 680,000 additional contributions. Just in 2020 alone, we made over 123,000 contributions. To give you a sense of scale, that's more than all of the other cloud providers combined. So when you truly want to take advantage of Kubernetes, there really isn't a match for GKE. Through multiple years of cloud credits to the CNCF to host Kubernetes on Google Cloud, we've also enabled the project to support 100 million container downloads daily and run over 400,000 integration tests monthly. That's totaling over 300,000 core hours on GKE and Google Cloud. Even the Kubernetes project itself is built and served from GKE and Google Cloud. And as the creators of Kubernetes, it's not surprising that we have a really great managed Kubernetes service. In fact, I think we can credibly claim that it's the best option for you in the market. GKE was the very first managed Kubernetes service. In fact, we celebrated GKE's 5th year birthday last year, and GKE continues to be the gold standard by which all Kubernetes platforms are measured. It's no wonder that customers are embracing GKE. 5 out of the top 10 telco, media, and gaming companies, 6 out of the top 10 healthcare and life sciences companies, and 7 out of the top 10 retail and CPG companies, all ranked within the Fortune 500 companies, are already using GKE to manage and solve their business needs of speed, scale, security, and availability. And when it comes to scaling up, GKE is really second to none. After all, Google itself operates numerous billion user services, so we know a thing or two about deploying workloads at scale. We bring the same expertise into Kubernetes in a way that only Google Cloud can. Here's an example. Customers like Bayer Crop Sciences have seamlessly scaled their research workloads over 200x using 15,000 node clusters on GKE. That's remarkable, since GKE is 3 times better than what EKS advertises and a staggering 15x of what AKS supports. GKE also offers native security capabilities such as network policy logging, hardened sandbox environment, vulnerability scanning, shielded nodes that use a cryptographically verifiable check, and confidential nodes. All of these security capabilities are designed to simplify implementing a defense-in-depth approach to security, enabling you to operate safely at scale. Customers like Shopify trust GKE to enable unprecedented e-commerce scale without any hiccups. Over the most recent Black Friday Cyber Monday period, Shopify processed over $5 billion in transactions with a helpful assist from GKE and Google Cloud. GKE also provides industry-first capabilities such as release channels, multi-cluster support, four-way auto-scaling, and node auto-repair to help you improve your availability. And it's not just all of these great capabilities. GKE also helps you optimize costs with its efficient bin packing and auto-scaling. Customers like OpenX are benefiting from this by saving up to 45% by using GKE. Customers are also choosing GKE because they want to run their workloads on the most reliable, scalable, automated, and secure service, one that was created by the team that invented and continues to invest the most in Kubernetes. Leading technology companies are also embracing GKE. Databricks is offering their powerful data platform on Google Cloud with GKE. We're constantly pushing the limits of what's possible, including our recently released GKE Autopilot, which is a new revolutionary mode of operation, one that lets you focus on creating great services for your users while GKE takes care of your Kubernetes clusters. Customers like Strabag and Via Transportation are already seeing dramatic improvement in the performance, security, and resilience of their Kubernetes environments by using GKE Autopilot, and they're having to spend less time on managing their clusters. Our 5+ years of ongoing and increasing investment have developed GKE light years ahead of the competition, so you can be confident that it will meet your needs today and well into the future. As you scale, we'll be there to support your success and growth. Stay tuned to learn more about GKE and GKE Autopilot.
GKE and Kubernetes together is maybe the most innovative thing we had in the IT with 10 years.
The move to GKE solved a lot of pain and hassle we had with our previous infrastructure, and ever since then it is running without a hiccup.
From a technical point of view, the migration from our old provider to GKE was very smooth and very uncomplicated.
The biggest advantage of GKE, it's scalable, multi-region, and super stable.
It has solved all our reliability problems, and it takes the hassle away from our team so we can really focus on being innovative.
The stability is there, right? We are able to innovate faster. There are faster release cycles that bring higher customer satisfaction.
My favorite thing about GKE is that I don't have to worry about it.
I don't need to do maintenance, I don't need to fix it. I can just play around with new fancy stuff.
GKE is the perfect offering that really brings Kubernetes to life in a carefree package.
You simply have to use it. Go for it.
Thank you, Polly. Hi, everyone. I'm Chen Goldberg, and I'm VP of Engineering at Google Cloud. Thank you so much for joining us today. Are you ready to get under the hood of Autopilot? Let me take you behind the scenes. When I think about GKE Autopilot, I immediately think about the spork. To be honest, the first time Tim Hawkins mentioned the spork, I had to Google it. I had no idea what a spork was. In Hebrew, we have no word to describe it. But in 2017, it was how we thought about GKE, not a fork nor a spoon. You see, Kubernetes was a hit. Adoption was skyrocketing, and GKE's customer base became more diverse with different types of workloads and many more roadmap requirements. Questions from customers were diverse and complicated. Can we offer support for the newest Kubernetes APIs, offer better security, better reliability, and cost efficiency without compromising SLOs? And while doing all of that, can we improve ease of use and smooth upgrades? It felt like all of this would be impossible. Open source Kubernetes was new in the market and was meant to be the fork of all things containers, a sophisticated tool that required a lot of practice to get right and not stab yourself in the eye. GKE was also a brand new product based on the flexibility of Kubernetes, but managed by Google, so easier to use, but with a long roadmap to true enterprise adoption. So not a fork, but also not a spoon. And customers were clearly asking us to make Kubernetes easier. Almost 5 years ago, we asked ourselves, what will it take to build a spoon? Or maybe we should move forward towards the fork more, but that didn't feel right. So it was set, we are all in. We are going to build the spoon, the best managed Kubernetes service that is opinionated, cost-effective, secure, and reliable. Leveraging our 15 plus years managing containerized applications at scale. GKE Autopilot is the result of a years-long challenging journey we embarked upon back then. With the launch of Autopilot, GKE users can now choose from 2 different modes of operation, each with their own level of control over their GKE clusters and the relative responsibilities related to GKE. We finally have an industry first, the Kubernetes spoon. As Pali already mentioned, GKE already offers an industry-leading level of automation that makes setting up and operating a Kubernetes cluster easier and more cost-effective than do-it-yourself and other managed offerings. Autopilot represents a significant leap forward. Put simply, Autopilot allows you to embrace Kubernetes and simplify operation by letting Google manage the cluster infrastructure, control plane, and nodes. This level of automation provides 3 key benefits. First, you can now optimize your workload for production like a Kubernetes expert, but without being one. With Autopilot, GKE creates clusters based on battle-tested and hardened best practices learned from Google SRE and engineering experience, so you don't need to. This means that the time to deploy a new workload is shorter. Platform teams or developers can focus on their application and workload and not spend time figuring out node configuration, sizing of workloads, and managing these settings from time of deployment and on. Play Japan already published their story of using Autopilot for ML workloads and how it impacts their velocity. Second, you get a stronger security posture from the start. With Autopilot, GKE helps secure the cluster infrastructure based on years of experience running the GKE fleet. When designing Autopilot, one difficult decision we had to make from an architecture standpoint is whether and how much we lock down access to the Kubernetes nodes. We followed our internal Google infrastructure best practices and decided not to allow SSH to the node. It's a big deal. In the past few years, we invested in processes and instrumentation that allows us to achieve the same and better level of observability and control without compromising the node. Similarly, we had a great deal of debate on the right trade-offs, which security settings to standardize on and which to still expose to the user. To give a sense for the level of details, we took learnings from previous Kubernetes-related vulnerabilities and took actions, like disable CapNet raw. The end result is a product where security defaults give you peace of mind, while at the same time, you get the flexibility where you need it. Autopilot implements GKE hardening guidelines and security best practices, utilizing GCP unique security features like shielded GKE nodes, workload identity, and binary authorization. In addition, Autopilot blocks certain features deemed as less safe, such as external IP services or legacy authorization. Also, by locking down nodes, Autopilot reduces both the cluster attack surface and reduces the risk of ongoing configuration mistakes. Finally, last and not least is the ability to use Google as your SRE for both nodes and control plane. Google SRE already handles cluster management for GKE. With Autopilot, Google SRE manages your nodes as well, including provisioning, maintenance, and lifecycle. We invested heavily in creating guardrails, more monitoring, added many service level indicators, and automation to mitigate issues. This work allows us to take responsibility for the nodes. And we kept true to Kubernetes. Like I said in the past, I think Kubernetes not being a black box is powerful and empowering. It was important for us to maintain it, so all GKE customers benefit from this investment today. And perhaps the most exciting part is that you get all these benefits while paying for only the optimized resources you use. What Autopilot has allowed our customers to do very quickly is to offer better environment for their developers by automating many of the day-to operations. Best-in-class GCP capabilities such as networking, observability, instrumentation, save upgrades, scale, just to name a few, are all available under the hood of Autopilot. With Autopilot, you allow your development teams to focus on what they do best, write application, not tinker with infrastructure. This was our vision, the Kubernetes spoon. I'm very proud of what the team built. My recommendation, make Autopilot your standard. Now, let's see Autopilot in action. Take it away, Yochai.
Adopting GKE has been one of the game-changing moments for us because we really get to focus on what we need to do rather than worry about the basic things. Prior to using GKE, we actually managed Kubernetes on our own, and we had to use scripts like KOps, and you require quite a bit of experience to understand what's going on. With GKE, all you do is go to a console, click, and your cluster's up and running. GKE, to me, is the heartbeat. It's the rhythm of our system. It's what keeps our system running 24/7, 365 days a year. Yeah, GKE simply works.
Thank you, Chen. And hello, everybody, and thank you again for joining us today. My name is Yochai Kiryadi. I'm a product manager working on GKE, and I'm really excited today to take you on a deeper look into Autopilot. As Chen mentioned, we invested a lot in taking all of the learning, best practices, and everything we've achieved with GKE over the last 5 years and package it all together into Autopilot. Autopilot allows you to embrace the Kubernetes and simplify all the operation and everything related to the cluster lifetime management, letting Autopilot manage the cluster infrastructure, control plane, node pools, nodes obviously, and everything associated with that. The end result is an optimized and ready for production cluster with pre-enforced configuration that Autopilot basically manages for you. With that in mind, let's dive into what makes Autopilot, well, you know, Autopilot. Out of the box, Autopilot is optimized for high availability and high reliability, right? We ensure, for example, that the master is deployed across multiple zones to provide API availability. With that in mind, also, Autopilot uses release channel. By default, it's the regular release channel, but you can obviously choose rapid or stable. This will allow your Autopilot cluster to be up to date, keep with all the Kubernetes update, patches that we have in terms of security and all the new features. We also enable certain features like node auto repair and storage upgrade, again, to allow your cluster to be highly available and reliable even during upgrade performance. Autopilot an Autopilot cluster, just like GKE, basically is designed to scale. With Autopilot, we are provisioning all the resources dynamically with node auto provision, which will allow us to dynamically provision all the resources for you based on your workload specification. Combination with HPA and VPA will allow you obviously to scale, and your application will scale as there is more demand for resources and as you define in terms of scaling profile and characteristic. Security is on top of mind. With Autopilot, we are implementing as much as we can from the GKE hardline guides. Out of the box, you're getting Autopilot with COS and Containerd, again for optimized operating system. We are also deploying Autopilot with certain features like workload identity and shielded nodes, again to secure application, to provide improved security posture for your entire clusters. We've also done a lot of internal tweaks. Some of them, for example, is like disable external IP and cap net raw. Both of those features, had number of CVEs last year. We're also blocking some older and deprecated features which are deemed unsecure. For example, we're blocking basic auth, legacy authorization, and the Kubernetes dashboard. With that in mind, in terms of the security, we're doing a few more things. Mainly what we're doing is blocking access to the nodes, which basically lead me to some of the restriction that we have with GKE Autopilot. For us, for GKE Autopilot to provide that full, rich managed experience, provide that SLA for the pod scheduling, Autopilot requires to restrict some of the Kubernetes APIs. Specifically, user cannot edit any Kubernetes node objects. And we are also blocking SSH access to the node, and we are disallowing any privileged pods to run. This allows us basically to ensure the node integrity and our capability to provide that SLA for you. All the pods in GKE Autopilot are scheduled with a guarantee class of quality of service, which basically means that your limits are equal resources. And again, this is done for us to be able to provide that dynamically, to provide the capability to dynamically provision resources based on your requirements and your workload demands. Okay, so we've covered some of the details and internals of Autopilot. I believe this is time to go for a quick demo and see how everything in action. So here we are at Cloud Console. As you can see, I have a number of GKE clusters. Some of them are Autopilot, and one of them is, for example, standard. And we have to remember, GKE is a great product, right? It allows hundreds of thousands of customers to run their workload reliability and scale and very much secured. GKE standard has plenty of deployment option, right? Providing high configuration flexibility to really optimize your workload. It's really an awesome product. So as you go and try to create a cluster, you'll see that we have two options. We have standard and Autopilot. And if just really quick we look at standard, you can see that in the standard Autopilot, there is a lot of configuration options for you to choose from. You can obviously choose the type, different release channels and configuration. You need to provide information about the node pools, size, machine size of the node, initial node pool, the different nodes, the type, the size, or kind of security configuration. There's a lot of options in the automation for updates and notification that happens through there, networking, security. As I said, GKE Standard has plenty of those deployment options, providing you high configuration flexibility to really optimize your workload as you see fit. But with Autopilot, what we have done is as we said, we have taken all of those configuration and we're taking the approach of providing an opinionated, secure, and optimized for production workload. That's basically streamline all your workload and streamline your day-to operation as well. So with that, we have here the Autopilot Create. You can see it's very simple and minimalistic in terms of the features that they're providing there. Obviously, you can choose between private and private and public cluster. There's some node network requirements because network need to be very specific to your needs. And under advanced option, again, as you can see, there's a very simplified list here. You can enable the maintenance window as an inclusion that basically tells us when do you want us to operate on your cluster, and that's it. You hit the create button and you have a cluster. It does take a little bit of time to create a cluster, and basically because we are creating cluster in your project, in your environment, in your VPC. This is a full-blown GKE cluster, so it takes a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes to basically set up a cluster for you. With that in mind, I already have several clusters deployed here. We'll go to Autopilot GKE Day 2, which is a clean cluster that I've created, that I've already created in preparation for this demo. And basically, let's just connect to the cluster and deploy and run some applications. All right, so we'll go and connect to our cluster. We're connected to the cluster, and great. So off the top, you'll see that an Autopilot cluster it's a Kubernetes cluster. So I can do basic stuff like get pods, for example. And you'll see that the pods are coming and there are no resources deployed in the default namespace because basically we haven't deployed anything as of yet. So if I look at something specific like in kube system, you'll see there are plenty of pods. And remember, you have not deployed anything in terms of your workload, so you're not paying for anything that is running on the cluster at this point, which is great. All right, and you can do some more stuff. For example, as we said, we deploy a Kubernetes cluster into your project so you can look at the nodes, for example. So by default, Kubernetes clusters come preset, and that's what you get when you deploy a clean and new Kubernetes cluster. You're getting those two nodes just as a backup for cluster, and we're using this cluster now. Okay, so with that in mind, what I want to show is like, let's see at some of the deployments that we actually want to run, and let's see where we at. Let's go to here, I believe. Awesome. So let's basically really quick switch into code and take a look at what we got. So we are going to, today we're going to deploy a WordPress. And why not? WordPress is one of the most common applications out there on the internet today. So as you would expect, you have a WordPress deployment. You have a bunch of YAMLs here that are describing your deployment. And this is my WordPress deployment with all the configuration. As you can see, there are also volumes that we need to mount because WordPress requires some storage, as you would expect. You can see here the storage class and the claims that are associated with that comes with that. And as you know, WordPress requires MySQL, so we have a MySQL deployment here, right? So we have a stateful deployment here. We have a database that requires a stateful set. We have volumes, again, associated with that as part of your deployment. And obviously we have Nginx here to kind of wrap everything together with that. Yeah, so with that in mind, what are we going to do is basically go into the right folder. These are the files, as we said, they are here. So, and we'll do what you would expect. You will do kubectl, apply, and basically just deploy everything that is in this folder. And with that, we are doing that. And it seems that our deployment is somewhat successful. So we have successfully applied and submitted the deployment. So let's see where we at in terms of kubectl get pods. You can see we have a number of pods here, and they're all pending, as what I would expect. They are very new, and it will take a little bit of time to set up. So while we are waiting, let's actually go into the Kubernetes cluster that we have created in the console and take a deeper look into that. So here we are back again at the console, and as you would expect, if you have created Gkey or you've been working with Gkey in the past, this should be a very familiar view. This is basically the cluster details. And as we said, with Gkey Autopilot, we are taking the best of Kubernetes and kind of packaging it together. So you have certain configuration here, for example, that are being preset and immutable. These are the standard, like a name and location and the region. But if you look at the default node zone, you'll see that you cannot edit those when you're in autopilot mode. And you also cannot change some of the release channel. Again, to provide us this capability of providing that SLA and managing the infrastructure for you. So you only care for the pods that you are deploying. Same token, part of the automation that we have maintenance windows and exclusion windows. Those are the ones that you can set, and or user upgrade notification to let you know when we are going to upgrade your cluster. These are, again, provide us the capability to work with you and understand when do you want to maintain, when would you want to provide maintenance scheduling for your clusters. As we said, auto-scaling, node auto-provisioning, and the auto-scaling profile are all preset configured. Again, you won't be able to change them within Autopilot. On the networking side, we have a little bit more, few more features that are associated here. Obviously, all the network configuration that we have set, those are the default that I've used. Again, you can change them during the configuration. And we have enabled and locked the internode visibility and cache performance reliability. Those are the right thing to do here. And if you look at some of the workloads that you see here, I see a bunch of workloads here. So let's check the right cluster that we're going to use. And yeah, so we have few of the pods are already running, and the MySQL requires a little bit more work because probably we need to provision some more resources with it, which is perfectly fine. So let's see what is our pod status again in that search. So let's just clear so we can have a clean new view on the pods. Okay, we are running. As I said, MySQL takes a little bit of time, which is perfectly fine. It's okay on this part. Okay, if we want to do really quick kubectl get nodes, real quick, you'll probably be able to see that we have provisioned few more nodes here, right? So remember, the first two with the 11 hours are here, and then all of those new nodes have been dynamically provisioned for you. Again, we're using NAP and autoscaler. This will be brought up to kind of run all the clusters that you need, or run all the workload that you need for you. Okay, so while we are waiting for our for WordPress deployment to complete, let's take a look at some other aspect of GKE Autopilot. So we will basically go into next is look at our YAML, and we have here few files that are basically interesting in that aspect. So let's quickly go to our code and look. So if you look at something on the system deployment, for example, if you look at the system deployment, you can see here that we have a file that tried to deploy a container into the kube system. But kube system is a protected namespace in Autopilot, so this should basically fail. And the way it fails is with a very clear error message that it provides you all the information that you need to know in terms of what's the reason for the failure. So you can see you get an error in terms of the deployment. You're trying to deploy something into a namespace like kube system that is managed for you, and you cannot be in deploy. And basically all the restrictions that in Autopilot will provide you a very clear error message that will be very easy for you to troubleshoot and kind of overcome. A WordPress deployment includes storage as well, storage volume for both for your WordPress as application as well as to the MySQL database. So let's basically take a look at persistent volume, for example. So you can see here we have two persistent volumes. Again, one for the MySQL and one for the WordPress itself, as you would expect. And obviously you'll see the claim, which are the Kubernetes object associated there. So this is all good. And obviously we should have few services to power up. To power up basically everything we need. Apologies about that. So yeah, we have few services as well, and there seems to be up and running, which is really good. Okay, so let's see the status of our nodes and see how many nodes we have and their state and where we're at. All right, so we have a number of nodes here. As you can see, we have the two that we have created early when the cluster was initially provisioned, and then few more for accommodating the WordPress application that we have, which is great. So in that in mind, let's see how our pods are doing and if our application is ready. And yes, it seems that we have everything running. So this is awesome. So let's really quick look at our service again. And the reason is that we need to copy our IP over here like this. We'll go here and we'll fire it up. And yeah, here it is, WordPress running on GKE Autopilot. This is the default setup and create skin. If I go continue, you can see here, and this is all working. Great, so if you want to learn more about Autopilot, you are more than welcome to look at our documentation. There is great detail and overview explaining exactly pretty much everything I said here during this last couple of minutes of the presentation about the default setting, pre-configuration, and option that we have with Autopilot. Thank you, I hope you guys enjoyed the demo. As you've just seen, it was super easy to create an Autopilot cluster, and we deployed a WordPress application that basically just works as expected because because GKE Autopilot is basically just Autopilot. With that, I would like to thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you learned some new stuff about Autopilot. And next up is the mighty Richard, who will talk to you about customer value.
Hey everybody, welcome to this session. We're going to look at some customer stories. My name is Richard Soroder. I'm a Director of Outbound Product Management here at Google Cloud. Excited to talk to you about what you're doing with Google Cloud and GCP and GKE. I think that's really important stuff as we think about what are the actual kind of day-to-day use cases. Nowadays, as we think about GCP and we think about GKE, it's often about what can't you do. You can do all sorts of things now. You can run everything in these platforms, especially GKE. So what are the things you're doing today? You're running commercial and custom software. You're running stateful and stateless workloads, Windows and Linux workloads, batch and real-time, streaming pipelines, edge things, right? A lot of exciting things that you're all doing today because GKE is a very mature, innovative platform. So I want to drill in today, not just on the exceptional use cases. I love those, right? Bear Crop Sciences doing 15,000 node clusters. That's amazing, but that's pretty unique. But I want to focus on what just regular teams are doing with GKE every day to add some value. You're running mission critical apps, you're running global systems, and you're migrating workloads from something old to something new. So I want to look at those three today and maybe, just maybe, inspire you to tackle one of those use cases or do something new on GKE. The first one I want to look at is mission critical systems, right? This isn't just for toy apps. You're running all kinds of things on GKE that if it goes down, your business goes down. If we look at a company like Pantheon, pretty interesting stuff. They do hosting, specifically web hosting, Drupal and WordPress sites, and they do a lot of cool ops stuff, but they're also known for really good service. And so they power 300,000 plus sites. They picked GCP because they liked our database performance, our system performance, our security posture, overall effectiveness and cost of the platform, which was great. Now GCE hosts some of their content management system, but GKE actually runs many of their core supporting systems. This is the lifeblood of how things work there. And so there's very, very important stuff that runs on GKE. The whole platform, their business runs here. It's exciting to see how they can use the platform to get advantage for their business, launch new things. And when they actually made the migration over, most of their customers actually didn't even experience it, right? It was such a simple, no downtime deployment that was pretty exciting for them. Now, at the same time, look, longstanding businesses or brand new ones look to GKE. This isn't just for startups, and it's not just for 100-year-old banks. So whether you're the New York City Cyber Command, they actually started in 2017, they were designed to protect the citizens of our most populated city here in the US. Now, as you'd expect, security kind of matters to a group like that. So they went cloud first, they went zero trust, all of that fueled by Google Cloud. And they run a whole bunch of things on Google Cloud to ingest data, things like PubSub, process it, analyze it, share it. And GKE actually runs many of the standalone apps the agency uses. So again, if GKE is not working, they're not able to be functional. I think that's, first of all, a big responsibility for us to take on and deliver awesome service, but also great to see that many mission critical things need GKE to operate, and you can trust it with those workloads. Next up, global applications. Certain things are regional, certain things might be even to a certain city or state or continent, but there's things that have to expand that. One of the interesting use cases I was looking at was what Phoenix Labs did with the Dauntless application or game. Right, this is a cross-platform game when it launched, which was unique at the time. PlayStation, Xbox, PC, now it's also Switch and Android. And as you can imagine, game environments, low latency matters, especially now. This isn't all offline, a lot of cloud component here. And actually the game servers run in containers in GKE, which is pretty cool. So the team there has put clusters in each of the regions where the game is supported, so 5 total continents. And the game instances, so when players come together into an individual match, they're actually tracked in the pods, which is wild. Now usage scaled pretty quickly here, which often happens with games. The first week they had 4 million players alone. And the team actually had to do about 1,700 deployments that first week just to keep doing things to the application and so forth. But you can do that if you have the sort of platform that can handle continuous delivery, that can scale quickly and easily, and can run in all these different places around the world. So some of your workloads don't need that sort of capability. Some of them do. And when you need that global availability, you need that resilience, that consistency across all those places, GKE's proved to be a pretty great place. Now, not everything is new games. Not everything is new applications. Sometimes you have existing stuff. Frankly, most of your stuff is probably existing, and that's fine. If you have existing software, that means that you've been in business for a little while. Congratulations, that's great. But sometimes those workloads need new homes. And so this was an interesting use case of what do I think about when my e-commerce platform needs to be modernized? And we know speed matters in these kind of platforms, right? A low performing marketplace, sheesh, we jump onto the next one, right? Page speed matters, responsiveness matters. And so Tokopedia actually serves up a huge marketplace for Indonesia, almost 100 million users per month. Now their e-commerce platform now runs on GKE, but didn't always support containers. One of their key services was actually VM-based and could only support 55,000 concurrent users. So they actually rebuilt part of that app as a set of microservices, and now supports 1.5 million concurrent users on GKE, which is awesome. So adding capacity is easy. They use auto scaling whenever there's a campaign-driven burst. So in this case, they were migrating, but they were also going to refactor, rebuild some of the application. That's fine. That makes sense, right? It's a lot of workloads where that works. And GKE is a great host for those sort of applications, whether they're still monolithic in nature or whether you've rebuilt them as a microservice. Now, sometimes you're not going to be able to do that. So if we think about existing software you might have, the British newspaper, The Telegraph, they ran a legacy CMS on VM instances in another cloud. So updates were painful. It was just tougher to maintain that system. They decided to use GCP. They also loved what we were offering in GKE. And so they migrated those applications off of VMs into containers thanks to Migrate for Anthos. You all today as GKE customers can use Migrate for free, which really just takes an application out of a Linux or Windows virtual machine, leaves the VM behind, and just containerizes the application itself. When Telegraph did this, they actually saw significant cost saving because you're turning down virtual machines, and they shrunk a lot of their day-to-day ops cost, which is pretty powerful stuff. So in this case, you might migrate by replatforming or just refactoring the app, or you might modernize and migrate by actually changing the code. Both of those are fine. GKE is going to be great for both of them. Now, regardless of which of these things you're doing, I think we all know now, especially the runtime itself isn't the only piece of the container life cycle, right? I've got to build it. I've got to have the tools to build it, store it in the proper registry, monitor it, the whole life cycle. We're actually really good at that here at GCP. We're working hard at that. So you have a good experience on your desktop as you're doing emulation, as you're developing your code, as you're using things like build packs to generate container images, then as you run and deploy. So regardless of your use case, whether you're building new, refactoring old, doing mission critical, doing local stuff, all of that, we're working really hard to make sure that GKE is a place to run as much of your environment and portfolio as physically possible. So all this tech is awesome. We love talking about features. We love talking about what customers are doing. But all that matters is how you use it to make a difference for your customers. That's what this is about. So you heard lots of great info today. Autopilot's amazing. Some of the work we're doing in Kubernetes continues to lead the way. I want you to go into these breakouts to learn a lot more and hopefully be excited about the ways you can do some pretty awesome new stuff thanks to GCP and GKE. Thanks for coming.
Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed those keynotes. My name is Kaslin Fields, and I'm a developer advocate here at Google Cloud, where I focus on GKE. I've really enjoyed learning about GKE Autopilot, and I hope you have too. Speaking of opportunities to learn, we have a few opportunities for you to dive a little deeper with some demos. In the area of management, we have one called Business Continuity with GKE Clusters. In scaling, we have Run Cost-Optimized Apps with GKE. In security, bolster your security posture with GKE. And observability, monitor your apps at scale with GKE. Each one of those can be found in the demo tab, so please go check those out. And after those are done, we'll have an after party where you can join us for some Q&A with the speakers, as well as a little bit of networking and some fun for us to get together after this event. And even further beyond this event, I hope that you've enjoyed learning about Autopilot today, and I hope that you're excited to get hands-on with it. And if you would like to, we have a hackathon coming up March 29th through April 21st. So please join us for that if you'd like to get hands-on with GKE Autopilot. So after this, make sure to check out the demo tabs that I mentioned to check out the different demo sessions that we have available. Then join us for the after party for a little bit of networking Q&A, and later join us for the hackathon to get hands-on. Thanks for joining.